All right, man, peace. So we're coming down the stretch run of the NBA regular season. And once again, the question begs to be asked, does Mr. LeBron James have what it takes to make an 8th straight NBA Finals appearance? Of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
Max, he's looking at his best even in his 15th season. But do you think he can carry the Cavs through the East? Because that's the real question.
No, I don't. Not this year. I do not.
Let me say this. I don't think that the Cleveland Cavaliers are the best team in the Eastern Conference by a long shot, but they do have the best individual player in the Eastern Conference by a long shot. And when you combine the fact that the NBA wants to wrap up the LeBron James storyline in Cleveland with a nice little bow, as well as the fact that the referees will be on the side of LeBron in the postseason, unlike how they were for pretty much most of the regular season, I see the Cleveland Cavaliers getting back to the NBA Finals. I would prefer to see the Boston Celtics in the finals, especially with a fully healthy Kyrie Irving, because I believe that they have the offensive and defensive system as well as the coaching to put up a very good performance against either the Rockets or the Golden State Warriors should they get there. I also think that Toronto will put up a better fight, even though they're far too mentally fragile to beat either team. And they resort back to a very base level of offensive game plan in clutch moments. Pretty much just going through Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan, and neither one of those players are clutch, especially in the playoffs.
Not as of right now. Look, if Kevin Love, as I've been saying the whole time, if Kevin Love comes back as something more closely approximating the player in Minnesota who was the go-to guy on that team, then the third wheel, in Cleveland during these last several seasons, then maybe. But we haven't seen that consistently with Kevin Love.
Well, I think that Kevin Love will approximate a higher level of Kevin Love than he's shown with the Cleveland Cavaliers, but he'll never appear to be the player that he was with the Minnesota Timberwolves because he's not going to get enough touches. When Kevin Love was with the Minnesota Timberwolves, he was averaging somewhere around 26 or 27 a game and about 13 or 14 rebounds a game. But he was also shooting about 43, 44% from the field. Why is that? Because he was allowed to take a lot of bad shots. In Cleveland, in the LeBron James system, he's going to mostly be taking post-ups and long-range three-point shots, wide open. So he's never going to be a guy averaging 25, 26 a game with Cleveland. At least I don't think. But then again, you never know in the playoffs with more minutes and more of an onus placed on the performance of your star players. So he might get there. But that's going to be his max. That'll be his max performance, is to average 24, 25 a game in the playoffs. And they'll probably need that for them to get back to the finals. But beyond that, a lot of their role players, a lot of the newbies that they've traded for they're going to have to show out. And of course, LeBron's going to have a normal LeBron James level playoffs. 28, 29 a game, 8 assists, 8 rebounds on about 53, 54% from the field. He's going to have to give them that at the very least for them to have a chance to get to the finals.
Still make the Cavs the underdog in that scenario. We haven't seen if Kevin Love can come back and stay healthy and then can consistently be a second option. Like we see as a third option, it's a little overkill. You don't really need Kevin Love to do, as much as he can do to do that. And as the first option, that's not good enough to win a championship. Can he be the second option? We know LeBron is the best player in the world by far. I was arguing yesterday, he's actually the MVP of the league in the red.
Well, he is the best player in the world in my view, but he's not by far. There's not much difference between him and Kevin Durant, believe it or not, as long as Kevin Durant's head is screwed on properly, which is always a challenge for him. And I'll be covering him in another video. But as I've stated already, the Golden State Warriors, they have a couple of cherry bombs in their locker room. That being Kevin Durant and Draymond Green. Those two mama's boys. You never know what they're going to do. That's going to be a major problem for them coming down the stretch run of the season.
Regular season. And we've seen that he seems to never miss the finals.
And let me also add, no, LeBron is not the MVP of this season. That's James Harden.
In the Eastern Conference. But this year it's a little different. The cast of characters around him, other than Kevin Love, are not really starters. Some of them could be starters. They're good enough to be starters on a championship team, a couple of them, if you surround them with multiple all-stars and other top-flight starters. But on a team with one MVP candidate, one all-star caliber player, and that's it. There's no other surefire starter. No, this team is much more closely resembles, Stephen A., the team in Cleveland that he dragged kicking and screaming to the finals than any of the teams he's been on since. The Raptors are real top 5 offense and defense. And in case anyone hasn't noticed, the Celtics are a tough out even without Kyrie Irving.
Isn't that interesting? Let me start with Max Kellerman's statements about the current team architecture of the Cleveland Cavaliers and how much they are akin to the 2007 Cavaliers. I've stated this in a previous video. That's just how LeBron James likes it. That's how he needs it, as a matter of fact, because it gives him an out if and when he gets to the finals and loses. Well, look at what they had around me. It also gives him an out to leave the team. So it's pretty much perfect. Had they kept the team how they had it throughout the season with a bunch of overpaid veterans who were starting to get lazy and rebel against the LeBron James system, not only would he have gotten embarrassed in the finals, then all of the television pundits would have stated, well, LeBron, you have all these named players. You have IT, you had Dwayne Wade, you had Jay Crowder. You mean to tell me that you got swept by the Golden State Warriors or you lost to the Houston Rockets in 5 games and you had all that? But now that he has a motley crew, he has an excuse. So that's very good. In regards to Kellerman's statements about the Toronto Raptors, they have a lot to prove. Toronto, to me, is the Eastern Conference version of the Rockets. They have a lot to prove in the playoffs. The Boston Celtics, is interesting to hear Max Kellerman suddenly give them so much credit, when we all know he's a LeBron James super fan, and he spent most of the season, as well as Mr. Nick Wright, Colin Cowherd, watching the Celtics because they wanted to see Kyrie Irving fail so badly. But they've been forced to acquiesce and acknowledge that, yes, the Boston Celtics are very real. And anyone can see that they're real. All you have to look at is how the Boston Celtics performed in their home and home against the Golden State Warriors and in their home and home against the Houston Rockets. They beat the Warriors in Boston. They had a very competitive, great game in Golden State where Kyrie and Steph Curry had a shootout. Against the Rockets, they were able to defeat them in Boston. In Houston, they should have won that game. But unfortunately, they did not execute down the stretch, which is very rare for them. It also seemed as if Kyrie's knee issue was a major problem because he appeared to be hampered in that game.
And sometimes Al Horford and Marcus Smart and obviously all year Gordon Hayward and sometimes not Jaylen Brown. I mean, the Celtics are real. I'm saying LeBron is going to get stopped by either the Celtics or the Raptors.
So you're definitive about that. What you're saying is that LeBron James is not coming out of the East. Is that correct? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, because you lost me for a second. Here's the deal. He is coming out of the East. Because as I repeatedly have stated, I don't care what I see from the Boston Celtics. I don't care what I see from the Toronto Raptors. I don't see one team that I believe can beat LeBron James in a best-of-7 series.
In the East, I could see either one of them beating him. I just don't think it's going to happen. If they were to lose to the Boston Celtics or the Toronto Raptors, it wouldn't shock me because I think that their teams, they're weathered. They have a certain degree of maturity. Boston, because of what they went through last season and throughout this regular season, losing so many starters and being forced to weather the storm. Toronto, it just seems like it's time. I mean, if they can't get to at least the conference finals this year, and in the process, hopefully defeat a team like the Cleveland Cavaliers in the second round, and if they met them in the third round, hopefully defeat them and get to the finals. If they can't get it done this year, it's time to break that team up. It just is. It's time for those guys to go.
Best 4 out of 7. I am of the mindset, and I've been consistent about this, it ain't even about Cleveland to me. It's about LeBron James. Can you beat LeBron James in the Eastern Conference in a best of 4?
I agree. That's exactly what it's about.
I cannot see it happening. I just can't. It's just one of those situations where his level of dominance is what it is. And the fact that he can go inside or out, that he can turn into a post player, that would be formidable. That would be a problem against Toronto because of Serge Ibaka and Valanciunas. I think it would be less of a problem against the Boston Celtics. Whenever he takes his game down low against Boston, they don't seem to have an answer. I'm a huge fan of Jaylen Brown. I know him. I got a lot of love for him. He can really play. He's a young player as well. Got a lot of heart. Ain't scared of anybody. Was proud to see him hit that game-winning three-point shot at the top of the key last night against Utah.
Very talented young player. It'll be interesting to see if Boston considers packaging him in a deal to the San Antonio Spurs, possibly for Mr. Kawhi Leonard. We'll see.
But he's too small for LeBron.
I don't think that he'd be guarding LeBron. I would think that they would put one of the Morris twins. I believe Marcus is the player they have on their team. Marcus Morris, I believe, will be the person that they would have guarding LeBron, or trying to.
Jason Tatum is too inexperienced for LeBron. Al Horford is too slow for LeBron. The other guys are too small for LeBron. No matter what it comes down to, of course, Kevin Love is going to be there, I believe, even though his durability has been a question mark. I believe he'll be there come playoff time, and I think that the other players will feed off of it, but it's going to come down to LeBron James. And when LeBron James loses, it's going to be against a Western Conference foe. I do not believe it's going to be against the team in the East unless LeBron James sits up there and says, I don't care about winning because I don't want a 6th NBA Finals loss on my resume.
I don't think that's going to happen, Stephen A. Smith. So to even broach that hypothetical seems a bit outlandish. If that was the case, if LeBron was really that worried about losing a 6th NBA Finals, he would have just got rid of his no-trade clause and demanded a trade before the deadline and said, send me out west.
That is
What do you mean by that? What do you think, that he's not going to go all out because of that?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that that's the only way it would happen in my estimation, and I'm saying I don't believe it's going to happen, which is why I believe it's coming down to.
It doesn't come down to LeBron because we know what LeBron can do, which is more than everybody else, including James Harden, Stephen A. already.
Well, Max Kellerman, once again, it's not a one-on-one tournament. Yes, as an individual player, LeBron James can and will do more than James Harden because he's running the LeBron James system. He should be doing more. He should be filling up the stat sheets with his exploits. James Harden plays in a system where he understands how to utilize the other pieces around him. That's what makes what he's been able to accomplish this season with Chris Paul so impressive, because I, for one, did not believe that experiment would work, and I've definitely been proven wrong.
Regular season. In the playoffs in particular, he saves his legs by slacking on defense at times in the regular season. For the playoffs, we all know LeBron is capable of amazing
things. Keep making my point.
But he needs some support. So it actually comes down to Kevin Love. Look, there are other guys on the team you can say, well, if this guy continues to develop or if he has a kind of career series so far, maybe that Rodney Hood, for example, is a guy, he's kind of built like a defender. What if he turns into a perimeter defender? What if he fulfills his potential and becomes at least an above average starter in these playoffs? Okay, maybe. But the guy we've seen do it in the past is, in fact, Kevin Love. And if he can be a really good all-star instead of just an okay all-star, LeBron's got a shot. It's not.
Now, did you see what Max Kellerman did there? Did you see what he's trying to do? He's setting up another excuse for Mr. LeBron James. He's basically stating that no matter what LeBron does, it's not going to be his fault. If he gets knocked out of the playoffs in the second round, it's not going to be LeBron's fault. It's going to be Kevin Love's fault. So let's put the crosshairs on Mr. Kevin Love. We're going to closely scrutinize his stats and the games that he plays, how he plays them. What is his point output? How many rebounds does he get? Because it's never going to be LeBron James's fault. And many of the members of the liberal sports media, they act as enablers for LeBron James. And truly, that's what stops him from becoming the type of player that he would need to become to defeat a team like the Golden State Warriors or the Houston Rockets. Because as I've said, there's a way to beat those type of teams. You have to slow the game down. You have to make it a half-court game. But because they tell LeBron James that no matter what you do, everything's going to be okay, it's never going to be your fault, you know what that inspires him to do? Run up and down the court trying to play like he's 25 years old as opposed to playing out of the post. When you play out the post, not only does it slow the game down, it also helps your teammates rest their legs on offense for what they'll need to do on defense, which is to guard their man out to 25 feet. But because these guys, they never chastise LeBron for his style of play, it encourages him to keep doing it, which is what he did last year in the finals against Golden State. And I stated that point blank in my breakdown of the finals. I said that after game one, all LeBron was going to do was try to run with Golden State, make an ass of himself. And as the games went by, you would see that the level of quote-unquote team camaraderie and quote-unquote brotherhood that he likes to act like he exemplifies was going to dissipate game by game. And that's exactly what happened. After game one's loss in the finals last year, LeBron waited for his teammates. He was clapping hands with them. By game three, he was walking to the locker room by himself. And part of the blame are his stupid fans in the media.
It's not going to come down to LeBron. We know he's capable of doing incredible things.
You see that? It's not going to come down to LeBron, but he's the best player. Oh, you can't say that, sir, because coming into the season, we all know that the Cleveland Cavaliers were the favorite to get to the finals. So if they had to trade most of the team in order to satisfy LeBron, that means that it's always going to come down to him. Period. Now, we know realistically speaking, do his teammates have to perform relatively well? Yes, of course. But once you decide that the offensive system is going to be totally predicated on making sure that one player shines, yes, we're going to start by scrutinizing him, not Kevin Love.
He simply doesn't have enough on this team to get by a very good Raptors team and a very determined and well-coached Celtics team, even when they're not in full strength. I mean, the Celtics with Kyrie and fully loaded, even maybe without Gordon Hayward, and I'm here to tell you they're going to beat LeBron. And
I agree with that from the standpoint of how good their team is. But I believe that LeBron's individual magnificence, as well as the assistance of the referees, is going to allow him to get past that. But who knows? I sincerely hope that Boston's able to defeat them, because I think that Boston has the best chance of making the NBA Finals this year, something that is extremely competitive.
And the Cavs. But I feel the same way about the Raptors. By the way,
well, I don't know about the Raptors, Max Kellerman. I don't know if the Raptors can beat LeBron James. I think that LeBron has a mental hold over the Toronto Raptors in a very similar vein that Michael Jordan had over the Cleveland Cavaliers back in the early 90s in the playoffs, late 80s, early 90s, where they would see him and they would just crumble. The difference was that they actually tried to beat Jordan. Like, I get the feeling watching certain teams play against LeBron in the playoffs that they just give up before they even throw the ball out there. Like Toronto, Atlanta Hawks, like they just give up when they see LeBron. At least the Cavs tried to beat Jordan back in the late 80s, early 90s.
And in terms of the Eastern Conference, here's the bottom line. What I am saying ultimately is this. I don't believe that the teams in the East, a Boston Celtics with a questionable Kyrie Irving and without Gordon Hayward, a Toronto Raptors squad led by DeMar.
Well, Stephen A. Smith, the Boston Celtics have not had Gordon Hayward for the entire season. One can make the case that not having him has actually amplified the development of Jason Tatum and allowed him to truly flourish in that system. That's why you can expect Boston to try to package a Jaylen Brown and maybe a draft pick to the San Antonio Spurs for a Kawhi Leonard. It would not shock me, not even one bit.
DeMar DeRozan is good enough to knock off LeBron James in a best of 7 series in Eastern Conference. That's the difference between you and I. You think they're good enough. I don't.
If you see it as simply a story about the best player, then of course, LeBron James is head and shoulders above those guys. There's also a danger in Toronto, as I keep mentioning, that when the games get close, they ISO DeRozan and Lowry and get away from what makes them so effective.
Exactly. That's the best point that you've made thus far, Max Kellerman. You know, to be honest with you, just reflecting back on this past All-Star game, what cost Team Steph the victory was that Mike D'Antoni decided that he was going to have Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan on the floor at the end of the game, and the offense for Team Steph in the All-Star game started to run through them for some strange reason. I have no idea why. Well, neither one of those players are clutch players, and that's what cost them the game. If you were to go back and watch the very end of this past year's All-Star game, neither one of those guys knew what the hell to do under pressure, because neither one of them have a panoramic vision of the NBA court. Neither Kyle Lowry nor DeMar DeRozan. That's why they get into positions where they either have to pass or score. Great players with great NBA court vision, can in the flow decide to pass or shoot depending on what the defense gives them. And they know where all their options are. Good players or very good players get the basketball and they already have it made up in their mind what they're going to do, and they're not going to change what they're going to do. Because they start to get nervous. Their brain actually starts to speed up When you hear all-time great players speak, they always tell you how the game slows down for them. Good players in clutch situations, the game actually starts to speed up for them. LeBron used to go through that issue back in the early 2010s, late 2000s, early 2010s, when the pressure of being expected to win actually started to overwhelm him. To a degree, the playoff run that the Cleveland Cavaliers made in 2007 actually hurt his career more than it helped, because people started to expect him to go to the finals every year when they probably jumped up a couple levels more than they should have. And they were not good enough. Neither was LeBron good enough mentally yet. Now LeBron is at the level where in a clutch moment, he can shoot or pass. He's fully relaxed. Fully relaxed. But just to get back to the point, that's why, to me, Toronto's not truly a threat, because even though their overall team chemistry and architecture is better than Cleveland, they have more talent top to bottom than Cleveland and probably better coaching. But their top two players are just not clutch performers. And in clutch moments, the heavy edge goes to LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers.
On offense, which is moving the ball. But I'm here to tell you that even though those things may be true, if these two teams just play the way they have, or even if Cleveland elevates a little and Toronto comes down a little bit from their regular season performances, Toronto's still too good for them.
Who plays the way that they do in the regular
season?
season?
Too good.
Who plays the way that they do in the regular season?
I'm saying.
Thank you, sir. Max Kellerman, once again, he does not seem to grasp that the game changes in the postseason. Teams are going to sit back. They're going to game plan. Another series to watch very closely is if the Rockets end up playing the Utah Jazz in the first round. Watch that series very closely.
I'm saying if Toronto even comes down off their regular season standard a little and Cleveland elevates a little, I'm saying Toronto is still too good. They have the most effective bench in the NBA.
Right. But, people say this all the time. But how many times in the playoffs does your bench actually factor in to you winning series? Most of those guys on the bench are not even going to get playing time in the playoffs. Most teams don't go more than 8 deep in the playoffs. So a lot of that shit that you see in the regular season where the 10th guy in off the bench hits 5 threes in a game and, he scores 22 points and they win the game by 35, that's not going to happen in the postseason. If that does happen, you're probably going to get swept.
And their starters, by the way, play very well together. It's not simply an issue. If it comes down to close game after close game and it's LeBron James versus DeMar DeRozan, well, of course, Cleveland's going to win. Who's saying the games will always be that close? And by the way, Kyrie with the Celtics, it may be the same. The Celtics are, in fact, more impressive now, playing the way they've been playing with all their injuries, than I think they were even earlier in the season when their bench was going crazy and they were a little bit lucky to win a lot of close games.
No, Max Kellerman. There's no such thing as lucky to win close games. When you see a team like the Boston Celtics that are able to pull out a lot of wild games, you know why that is? Because of great coaching, mental fortitude, and great team synergy. What great coaching does is it puts the players in positions to get loose balls off the ground, to execute great half-court plays. That's what happens when you have great coaching. People who are unlearned or don't know what they're watching, they call it luck. Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. That's all it is. When you're properly prepared, meaning coached up, and your players believe in the system, and they are where they're supposed to be, and the game is on the line, they're going to execute because they've been prepped. That's how that works. You don't have a team like the Boston Celtics that has double-digit, quote-unquote miraculous wins over the course of a season, and you say to yourself, that's luck. No, it doesn't work like that. That's what's called team synergy and great coaching. So that's a habit. Winning games like that is a habit for well-coached teams.
I was not as impressed by the Celtics then as I am right now. I'm saying right now, unless Kevin Love elevates, this Cleveland team is going to lose to either the Celtics or the Raptors. Who says they get to the conference final?
I see. So it is Boston or Toronto, but unless Kevin Love elevates.
Well, if Kevin Love
if Kevin Love and he comes back and he plays like the all-star that he is, then all of a sudden I'd be right.
No, you're still saying regardless of that, I thought that.
That's what I thought. I thought regardless, it's going to be Boston or Toronto in the East.
Kellerman has to hedge his bets. That's what that amounts to. But it's good that Stephen A. Smith called him out on his bullshit pertaining to Kevin Love. Basically, Kellerman is saying there's no way that we can ever blame LeBron for not getting back to the finals. The fact of the matter is, if LeBron was to go out in the second round, he better average 35, 12, and 12. And it better be a 7-game series. Because if it's anything less than 7 games in a loss to Toronto or Boston, he's going to hear it. If he goes out in 5 games to the Boston Celtics and he averages 26, 6, and 6, yes, he's going to hear a hell of a lot. It is going to fall on his shoulders, but it's going to give him the out that he needs to go out and head out west, most likely.
I thought you said LeBron's not getting out regardless. You feel like if Kevin Love's back healthy, they will?
I've been maintaining the same thing for these last couple of days, at least, if not weeks.
Okay.
I've been saying the same thing for at least the last couple of seconds.
Kevin Love needs to be closer to the Kevin Love in Minnesota than he was the Kevin Love in Cleveland these last couple of years. And I don't...
That can only happen if they're running the system that the Minnesota Timberwolves ran back when Kevin Love was there, Max Kellerman. That's how that works, sir.
I don't just mean in terms of the numbers. The problem with Kevin Love on these Cleveland teams is he was a third wheel. He's kind of underused as a third wheel. We know he can't be the best player on a championship team. We know it's a little bit overkill with him as the third best player. Can he be the second best player on an Eastern Conference championship team?
Molly,
that's the whole question with these Cavs.
Molly.
That is a rather interesting hypothetical. I think that he can be the second best player on an Eastern Conference champion when you have a transcendent player like LeBron James, yes. Now, if he was the second best player on a team whose best player was Kyrie Irving, then the answer would be no. The answer would be no. But it would depend on how good the third, fourth, and fifth best players are. What makes the Boston Celtics so good is that Kyrie Irving is their best player. Their second best players most likely will be considered Al Horford. But when you go to their third, fourth, and fifth best players, there's not a serious drop-off. Like, there's not a big drop-off from Al Horford to Jaylen Brown or Marcus Morris, whoever you would have third, and then Jason Tatum, and then, Jaylen Brown or Marcus Morris, whoever. There's not a big drop-off. So that's what makes the Boston Celtics, as well as the fact that their backup point guard is probably the best backup point guard in the NBA.
Ollie, since Max can take a multitude of angles, allow me to emulate Max Kellerman. Hell, if DeMar DeRozan doesn't play well, and if Kyrie Irving doesn't play well, Boston's gonna lose.
Well, if you're asking me for... You do that all the time, incidentally.
Oh, please.
Incidentally.
Oh, please.
But if you're asking me for my
you
prediction...
You should be teaching lessons on that,
If you're asking me for my prediction, I am
LeBron is coming out of the East.
I am taking...
I agree with Steve. I have to see it. I have to see an Eastern Conference team beat him 4 times out of 7 games. But I think that we're on the cusp of that this year. We're on the cusp of that. If he would have signed back with Cleveland and they brought back the same team next year, which I seriously doubt is going to happen, but if that were to happen, I would certainly pick one of the Eastern Conference teams to knock them off next year. This year, I have to see it. It wouldn't shock me, but I need to see it.
Taking the Raptors and the Celtics over the Cavs.
I actually think the team that's best equipped to defeat the Cleveland Cavaliers are the Philadelphia 76ers.
Now, if you then say, Molly, you mean no matter what? No, I'm taking it based on present circumstances.
Got it.
The Raptors or the Celtics over the Cavs.
Well, we did ask him what he believed.
Yes, we're clear on everybody's position, so let's keep it moving.
All right.
But anyway, that's it on Mr. LeBron James and his chances of getting back to the finals. We'll see what happens. The NBA playoffs should be very good this year because for the first time in a while, we're not particularly sure who's going to get there, even though I would still pick Golden State and Cleveland if both teams are fully healthy. I'd prefer to see Golden State in Boston or Houston in Boston. But anyway, peace.